Hello, this is Francis from McCaffrey's Craft, and today I have a special guest. This guy who's my dad, and just thought we'd just do a little introduction today, just to kind of get him used to the old talking and stuff like that before he escapes or runs away or something. So hello.
Hello, how is it going?
All right. So yeah, if you can, just to kind of tell maybe just a little bit about how you got involved yourself in doing the old blackthorn, and we'll start from there.
Well, I was reared on a farm, and we had plenty of blackthorn sticks around and other sally rods. My father was he would make blackthorn sticks, and he would make creels. They were a type of a container for carrying out turf and stuff like that. And he was very handy. He was a handy man, so I learned a lot of my skills from him.
Okay, so that's good. Here, my mom is just spying on us now. Hello, how are you? Yeah, we're just doing a quick video here. Don't worry, you don't have to be on it.
It's okay.
We just have the watchful eye of my good mom on us as well. So look, you can see there. Look, my dad just grew up in the farm. He crafting was a way of life. He was just born into. That's how people survived back then. Like, creels would be for fishing and stuff like that. And Granddad, as I remember it, was an avid fisherman, and he was always good with his hands. And he had done that over the years. And what was the first things you started making yourself?
The first things I started making would have been helping them with donkey cars. They were for here in Ireland we had the donkey, or an ass as we called it, and they were they were for bringing milk to the creamery, and they would be involved in the turf and hay business, and anything that was needed taken out, manure, we'll say, to the fields for the potatoes and stuff like that. So I'd be giving him a hand repairing the wheels. They were all wooden wheels, and he also would be making a type of a wheelbarrow, a flat type, which was used for wheeling out turf as well. And they were all, every part of that was timber.
All right. Okay.
And also he would go to the forestry there was a certain time of the year when the forestry would allow you to cut some timbers, and he would get larch, and we would make gates and other pieces which would be out of the larch, which was it was a nice timber to work with.
Yeah, larch is pretty good. So what was Ireland like in the 50s, as you remember it as a kid?
Well, in that time there was very little transport or cars. There was no, everything was like by horse or donkey or something like that, or bicycles more. Went to school, we had a bicycle, and we learned to ride the bikes, and we went that way. And there was very little traffic on the roads, and money was scarce. There wasn't much need for it, because all sort of farmers who would be small farmers, we would be self-sufficient. We would have our own vegetables. We would have our own, anything we needed. Really, we grew it ourselves, and like we would have cows, and we would have milk, and my mother would make butter, and I remember making the butter with a churn, which my father made. So, he was very handy like that. He was also a stonemason as well. And look, when you were growing up in the country, you were a sort of a jack of all trades.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it operated, So then, when I came 16, I went away and served my time as a carpenter. So that was a 5-year course. And after that, then I started working out in construction and building, and I was 53 years at that.
Okay.
So that was part of my
So
life.
that's kind of the kind of synopsis that But what I'm thinking is that those skills are all coming back. Look, we're living in a crazy world. Things are going astray, and I think people need to be reminded that in the past we have been self-sufficient. Like, we have been able to survive. We make our own things. And, again, this is good to get an idea of how the past was. And this is how Ireland was. And even blackthorn was seen as just a normal part of Irish life. It was, like, can you remember even just kind of how people used to use blackthorn back in
Yeah.
the day?
Well, you see, the one of the first things about blackthorn was every house would have a little portion of blackthorn because it was used for making a type of sloe wine, the sloes, which were the fruit of the blackthorn. So every house, that was part of what they would do. They would use them for making the sloe wine, and they were a sort of shall we say, there was sort of a look. There were good look to have a bush around. There was some mythical thing that I'm not 100% sure of, but they were like a sort of a charms and type of stuff like that. You know what I mean? That people minded them and took care of them, and didn't allow them to spread, because blackthorn are more of a sort of a shrub type tree, if we call it, and they would spread all over the place, and you wouldn't, the thorns were lethal, which we all know over the years.
Why, did you get some injuries from blackthorn as a kid? Yeah.
For God's sake, non-stop, yeah. Between blackthorns and nettles. All the blackthorns, yeah.
And
Well, the worst blackthorn is the one when the sap is rising, like. But when they're sort of in the winter time, like the thorns, they will give us a severe prick and probably break inside and under the skin, but they won't react as much as the one with the sap would, which would turn septic and stuff.
Okay, it's an important point there to notice. And how did you deal with the injuries, or did you just rub them off?
Well, funny enough, my mother had a cure.
Oh yeah?
My mother had a cure for a lot of these things, because the old people had the herbs that were growing along the hedgerows and round the fields. They all had cures, and the people would have known, because there was no access to doctors and hospitals much at that time.
Okay.
Most even births were home births. There was very little really hospital care at that time.
Okay. And how was information passed around from people or from families?
That was from house to house, and they used to go for a ceilidh, they'd call it, to the next door neighbour's house. People would be going from house to house every other night, and there was no televisions or anything like that. The radios had just come in. I remember a radio we got in sometime in the mid-50s, and it was a battery radio, and we weren't allowed to turn it on or even touch it. It was only kept for the news and a few Irish programs where there would be music or something like that, but very little. It was spared because these batteries were expensive. They were a type of an Eveready, a big square battery.
All right, okay. What kind of things were on the radio at the time? Like, just, can you remember anything that you'd hear? Or
well, I remember at that time was the Suez Canal. There was I think that was in the 50s, mid-50s. It was a famous thing because it meant that exports and imports were affected all over. And this is why I remember that time was that the milk was not collected because of this, the Suez Canal crisis. So most of the people would have been churning their milk and making butter out of it.
Okay.
And using the buttermilk. So that's why at that period of time that was sort of a thing. Plus the fact then later, we'll say when President Kennedy got assassinated, that was another everything. Everyone remembers where they were when that happened. I remember I was at visiting a person's house. I was about 14 or 15 at the time, and I still remember it vividly because it affected all Irish people. So it was a sensational thing that happened. Like,
there's been a lot of crazy events that have happened over time, and just going back to like school life. There, you were saying like, how did the teachers carry any stick, or what was the type of thing they used to do at school?
They had a stick, a cane, or which was obviously cut out of the hedge, and I even had a few occasions to get laced with it. And another time, what would happen is the master, if it was broken, you'd have to go out and cut another one for him. So you could be hit with the one you cut. So you'd try and get a sort of an oldish one that might break handy. It wouldn't do much damage. But they would have been a type of hazel, you know, the hazel sticks.
The hazel ones,
The
yeah, 'cause
hazel
they're
ones,
straight and give you a
there
good
was
whip.
a bit of, they were flexible.
Yeah.
And there'd be a swish of them, and they'd be coming down on top of you.
All right,
But
okay.
look at those simple times, you know, those simple times. But that was it. There was no lunch. There was no nothing. Like, you just seemed to survive all day until you got home. You
Okay.
had your breakfast, and then you come home and you got something then to eat, dinner or something.
Okay. Look,
But and we all went, you know, you would go barefooted for 3 or 4 months of the year in the summertime.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be wearing any shoes, and our skin was like leather. The feet, you could walk over. I never remember getting torn or anything, except maybe getting a stone hit your big toe or something.
okay.
But that was the way it was.
Yeah, so look, there you go, guys. Just a quick introduction to my dad, and just a little talk about how the past was and how people in Ireland were at the time. And I think that's a good introduction before we kind of get a bit more into the Blackthorn side of things and his shillelagh making days. And yeah, we'll just leave part one at that for today.